And we're joined now by Raymond Perrier, who's a Durban representative of the National Homeless Network, to talk to us about what lockdown means for the poor and homeless, especially now that the lockdown has been extended. A very good evening to you, Mr. Perrier, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening. I hope you can hear me clearly.
We can. So let's talk about the plight of the homeless. From the very beginning, we saw some who were enthusiastic, thinking that their lot would change, not only in terms of having a roof over their head, but being given food and some way to help them come out of the various addictions. What is the picture now? Has it gone back to what it was?
No, so we're now on, obviously, day 21 of the original lockdown. And the vast majority of the people in the emergency shelters here in Durban are relatively happy. They're protected, they are safe from the virus. We scanned everyone before they went into the shelters. They're being fed 3, if not 4 meals a day. And the wonderful irony is the police, who are often their greatest enemies, are actually being paid to protect them at night. So I think most of our homeless here in Durban have understood that the shelters are there for their benefit, keeping them safe and protecting them from the virus.
Some of them did express concerns about being exposed to infection because of the small spaces that they find themselves in, complaining about the accommodation. Has that problem been attended to? And obviously it depends on what is available. Government has been trying to convince some people to move to safe places, but it hasn't always been successful.
So almost all of the homeless here in Durban are in effectively camps. They're in parks with fences, and there's a tent or 2 or 3 marquees which are spaced out so that people are sleeping 40 or 50 per marquee, and they're marked out by pallet. So automatically they're at least 1.5 meters apart. I'm actually here at the Dennis Hurley Centre, and we've got people staying in our halls upstairs. Those are the sick and the elderly and the most vulnerable, the disabled, and they're also spaced out during the night. And during the day, they're all the homeless in places where there is outdoor space, where they have the room to move around, to be on their own or to be with each other, where they can space out very comfortably.
Just in terms of the infection rate amongst those in homeless centres, especially in KwaZulu-Natal, have you been able to glean any information? Have they been part of the testing and screening drive that the province is undertaking?
They haven't been part of the screening. Also, they were part of the screening before they joined. They haven't been part of the testing. And we have made a specific request to the Department of Health that they should target this group. We have effectively 1,300 people in designated shelters. So that's a group of people very easy to test and very easy to use as a proxy for testing a larger population, because we know where they are. And unlike, for example, people in townships or in informal settlements where they're harder to follow up with, it's much easier for us to follow up with any cases that emerged here in the shelters. So that request has been put to the Department of Health. They don't seem to have taken it seriously at the moment, so I'm hoping that they will.
What about those who haven't heeded the call to come to safe spaces?
There were a few at the beginning. I think after the first week or so, when they realized that the safe spaces were indeed safe and reasonably comfortable, but also realized that a lot of the feeding schemes or the begging that they normally relied on were not available, they came into the spaces. What we are seeing now, sadly, on the streets of Durban are people begging for food, not because they're homeless, they have places to stay, but they've run out of food. So we're seeing a new wave of poor people who are on the street, very sadly.
Hunger is obviously a big issue for people who aren't earning enough, who aren't earning at all, who aren't able to go out and about because some of them do rely on begging. What is the situation with the homeless people in KwaZulu-Natal, and have any of them received food parcels? Is it helping?
Now, as I say, in the shelters, people are fed all 4 meals a day, so they don't need food parcels because they get prepared food, and we have a fantastic network of NGOs, literally Christian, Hindu and Muslim, working side by side to ensure everyone gets suitably fed. In other parts of KZN, in Pietermaritzburg and Richards Bay, the processes have been slower, but they're now coming online. The food parcels are really needed by people who are living in their homes but have run out of food. And I was talking to the Deputy Mayor only this afternoon. Her focus, now that the homeless are settled in the emergency shelters, her focus is on food parcels to make sure that people can stay safely at home and are getting food.
Just very quickly, we don't have a national policy on how to deal with homeless people. going forward, coming out of the lockdown, whenever that is, due to speculation that there may be an extension. Obviously, government hasn't said anything yet. But what would you advise government to do?
I think what this crisis has shown is that there is a way for government to work with NGOs like the Dennis Herbie Centre and organisations like ours around the country to actually develop creative strategies that are effective, that are cost-effective, and actually make a difference in people's lives. Unfortunately, sometimes the policies that people dream up are very top-down and don't actually make sense on the ground. And we've seen that, sadly, in some municipalities where they've come up with ideas for shelters that just haven't worked. But if you work with people who understand the homeless community and have their trust, we can build strategies that work not just for the homeless, but work for all the residents of our city.
Thank you so much for speaking to us, speaking on behalf of the homeless in KwaZulu-Natal. That there's Raymond Perrier.